A cozy cottage, perched on a green hill under a starry night sky. A gentle woman with silver hair stands on a moonlit porch, holding a shimmering net that catches tiny, glowing flecks of falling starlight. The scene is warm, magical, and peaceful, with soft blue and gold hues.
In a cozy cottage at the edge of the world, where the hills kissed the sky, lived a weaver named Elara.
Every night, as the stars began to shimmer, she would climb to her moonlit porch and unfurled a shimmering net woven from moonbeams. With gentle hands, she caught tiny flecks of falling starlight, each one glowing with a soft, warm pulse. "These," she whispered to the night breeze, "hold the dreams and sorrows of the world." A cozy stone cottage at dusk on a hilltop, with a wide, moonlit porch. A woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes sits sorting glowing starlight flecks of gold and blue into glass jars on a wooden table. Behind her, the night sky is full of swirling stars and a soft crescent moon. Warm lantern light glows from inside the cottage.
Each fleck she caught was unique.
Some were bright as a child's laugh, pulsing with golden light. Others were deep blue, heavy with unshed tears. Elara sorted them into little glass jars, humming a lullaby older than the mountains. When a jar was full, she would hold it up to the moon, and the light inside would swirl and dance, weaving the old into the new. Every night, she told the sleeping village below, "I mend the sky with dreams." A lone girl on a mountain at night, holding a tiny, dark shard in her open palm. The moon above has a single tear streaking down its face. Stars flicker dimly around her as most of the sky glows softly with swirling light.
But one night, a fleck of darkness fell into her hands. It was cold, sharp-edged, and silent.
Unlike the others, it did not hum or glow. Elara frowned and held it closer. The fleck trembled, then whispered a single word, quote, "Forgotten." The sky above her flickered, and a small tear rolled down the moon's cheek. A young girl in a cloak holds a glowing silver tear in her hands, standing on a mossy forest floor. In front of her, a dark, jagged fleck floats, leading her toward a newly appeared winding path lit by soft moonlight. The moon above has a single tear streak on its face. Elara gasped. The tear from the moon fell like a silver pearl, landing beside her on the mossy ground. It hissed and steamed, then opened like a tiny flower. From its center rose a wisp of light, shaped like a child's sigh.
"This is the first sorrow," the fleck whispered. "You must carry it home."
Elara wrapped the tear in her cloak and followed the fleck down a path that had not been there before. A magical forest path at night, winding through glowing ferns and mossy stones, with a little girl in a cloak holding a shimmering silver tear under a watchful full moon. The path twisted through ferns that whispered secrets, and over stones that hummed with forgotten songs. Elara clutched the tear close, feeling its cold weight pulse against her chest. Above, the moon watched with a silent, silver eye. A dark forest clearing at night, lit by a bright full moon. A tall silver tree with glowing symbols on its bark stands in the center. A small bird with fiery amber eyes perches on a low branch, staring at a young girl holding a glowing teardrop against her chest. Ferns and moss surround the scene. The forest began to change. The ferns grew taller, their fronds brushing her shoulders like curious fingers. The stones beneath her feet no longer hummed. They whispered in thin, high voices, telling tales of shadows and light. Elara stopped at a clearing where the moonlight pooled on the ground like spilled milk. In the center stood a silver tree, its bark alive with shimmering symbols. A small bird with eyes like embers perched on a low branch and tilted its head at her. A silver tree with glowing symbols in a moonlit forest clearing. A small bird with ember eyes perched on a branch, and a girl reaching toward the tree as the background shimmers with a faint violet sky and 3 moons.
Elara stepped closer, and the symbols on the tree glowed brighter, pulsing in time with her heartbeat.
The ember-eyed bird chirped once, a sound like a single piano note in a silent hall. She reached out to touch the bark, but her fingers passed through it as if through mist. The clearing shimmered, and for a moment she saw another sky above. a sky of deep violet, with 3 moons hanging low. A young girl with sparkling hands stands in a violet-lit alien forest with 3 moons, facing a glowing fox-peacock hybrid creature with a shimmering tail, surrounded by floating islands and crystal streams, soft magical lighting, watercolor fantasy illustration style. Ilara gasped as the world tilted. The familiar trees of the clearing faded into deep violet shadows, and the ground beneath her feet became soft, glowing moss. The 3 moons cast silver light across a land of crystal streams and floating islands. A creature, half fox, half peacock, trotted up to her, its tail shimmering with 1,000 colors. It opened its mouth and spoke in a voice like wind chimes.
"You have been expected." Heart touched,
Ilara looked down at her hands. They sparkled faintly, with the same light as the tree symbols. A young girl with glowing hands stands on glowing moss under 3 moons, facing a shimmering fox-peacock creature that bows. Behind her, floating islands and crystal streams stretch into a violet twilight landscape. A single iridescent feather drifts downward, soft, magical lighting with silver and emerald hues.
The shimmering fox-peacock bowed its head. "The weaving is weak," it chimed. "The shadow you saw in the forest is a tear. You must mend it before the colors drain away forever." Ilara clutched her sparkling hands. "How?" she whispered. "Follow the silver stream to the weaver's spire," it said, turning. "But beware. The unraveler hunts those who shine." It vanished into a puff of emerald smoke, leaving only a single iridescent feather floating to the moss. A young girl with sparkling hands stands on the bank of a magical stream made of glowing silver threads. She holds a shimmering feather in one hand, and the light from her pocket glows through her dress. The forest around her is dark but filled with floating motes of color, and the stream twists ahead into the twilight between ancient trees. Ilara knelt and picked up the feather. It was warm, pulsing with a soft light, and when she held it to her ear, she thought she heard the faint hum of 1,000 tiny looms. She tucked it into her pocket, where it glowed through the fabric like a lantern. Ahead, the silver stream glittered between ancient trees, its waters flowing not with water but with threads of liquid light. She stepped onto the bank, and the moment her foot touched the stream, the thread light wrapped around her ankle, tugging gently. "I'm coming," she breathed, and followed the luminous current into the deepening woods. A glowing bridge of woven light threads floating above a mossy forest floor, leading to a clearing with a single wooden loom carved from living wood, threaded with starlight. A young girl with a glowing pocket stands on the bridge, looking ahead. Soft green and pearl tones, magical forest atmosphere, children's book illustration style. The threadlight path led Ilara deeper into the forest, where the trees grew tall and their leaves whispered secrets. She noticed that the silver stream's luminous threads began to braid themselves into a narrow bridge, floating just above the ground. She stepped onto it, and with each step the bridge swayed like a spider's web, but held firm. Below, the forest floor was carpeted with soft moss that glowed faintly. Up ahead she saw a clearing bathed in a gentle, pearl-colored light, and in its center stood a solitary loom, its frame carved from living wood and threaded with strands of starlight. The feather in her pocket hummed louder, tugging her toward it. A glowing wooden loom in a moonlit forest clearing, carved from living tree branches entwined with silver and starlight threads. A small feather floats above a shuttle that is weaving a luminous tapestry showing a path, mountain, and aurora. Soft pearl light and glowing moss surround the scene, digital illustration style, magical and ethereal. Ilara approached the loom, her breath catching in her throat. It wasn't just a loom, it was alive. The wood pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat, and the starlight threads shimmered with colors Ilara had never seen. Colors that shifted and sang. As she reached out a trembling hand, the feather in her pocket flew out, landing on the loom's shuttle. Immediately, the shuttle began to move, weaving the feather's silver thread into a tapestry. Images formed, a winding path, a great mountain, and a sky filled with dancing lights. A gentle voice, like wind through leaves, whispered, "You have found the loom of whispers. Now you must weave your own story."
Close-up of a young girl's hand touching a glowing wooden loom, with a single blue thread weaving into a tapestry showing a river and green valley, soft magical light, and floating dust motes. Elara hesitated, her fingers hovering above the shimmering threads. The loom hummed softly, coaxing her forward. She took a deep breath and touched the warm, pulsing wood. As her fingers brushed the fibers, a memory surfaced, her grandmother's hands, calloused but gentle, teaching her to weave a simple braid. Tears blurred Elara's vision, but she smiled. All stories begin with one thread, she whispered. She chose a thread of deep, twilight blue and let it glide through her fingers. The loom responded, pulling it into the tapestry, where it became a river, winding through a valley of emerald trees. A young girl with flowing hair, standing in a sunlit workshop, touches a magical loom. A river of deep twilight blue flows from the shimmering tapestry and circles her feet. Tiny silver and gold fish leaped around her head. Behind her, a valley with emerald trees is lit by a glowing sunrise orange sun. The river shimmered, flowing right off the tapestry and around Elara's feet. She gasped, stepping back, but the water felt warm and friendly. Tiny fish, woven from silver and gold, leaped from the river and swirled around her head like a crown. Elara laughed. She realized the story was alive, waiting for her to keep weaving. Carefully, she added a thread of sunrise orange. It burst into a glowing sun above the valley, casting long shadows and painting the emerald trees with light. A young girl kneeling by a shimmering river that flows out of a tapestry, with a glowing sun in the sky, a distant castle surrounded by mist, and silver and gold fish swirling around her head like a crown, all rendered in a whimsical watercolor children's book style. As the sun rose higher, Elara saw a castle appear in the distance, its towers wreathed in mist. The river led her toward it, and with each step, new threads appeared. A bridge of moonstone, a field of singing flowers, a path of woven wind. She knelt by the water's edge, dipped her fingers in, and felt the story pulse like a heartbeat. "You are the weaver now," whispered the river. Elara smiled and threaded a strand of starlight into the fabric. A young girl with flowing hair sits on a throne made of roots and clouds in a grand hall lit by floating threads of colored light, weaving a luminous tapestry on a glowing loom, with a starry river visible through an open castle gate. Elara stood at the castle's gate, a tapestry of threads draped over her arm, moonstone, song, and wind. The door, carved from ancient oak, shimmered with runes that shifted like ripples. She touched the starlight strand, and the gate swung open silently. Inside, the great hall was a loom of lights, with pillars woven from sunset and floor made of echoes. In the center, a chair of roots and clouds awaited. Elara sat, and the threads began to dance around her, guided by her thoughts. She saw the story's heart, a luminous knot, and knew she must untangle it to save the world from fading. With steady hands, she began to weave, pulling threads of courage, kindness, and dreams into a new pattern, the river's whisper still in her ear. A young girl with braided hair sits on a throne woven from roots and clouds in a vast hall of luminous threads. She is weaving a glowing tapestry with strands of moonstone, song, and wind, her expression determined and calm. The hall has pillars of sunset light and a floor like shimmering echoes. Before her floats a bright, complex knot of light, with one dark, tangled knot remaining. The scene is magical and hopeful, with soft illumination and a dreamlike atmosphere. As Elara wove, the great hall hummed with a melody older than mountains. Each thread she pulled sent ripples through the fabric of the world. A tear mended here, a memory brightened there. The luminous knot pulsed, its tangled strands of sorrow and hope slowly loosening. Her fingers moved faster, guided not just by thought, but by the river's song and the whispers of all who had come before. The chair of roots and clouds trembled, and the tapestry of moonstone, song, and wind began to glow like sunrise on snow. Elara smiled, for she could see the story taking shape. A story where every child's laughter echoed in the stars, and every act of kindness wove a thread of light. But one knot remained, tight as a fist, dark as a forgotten shadow. She reached for it, her heart steady, ready to finish what she had begun. A young girl in a glowing room holding a single golden thread, smiling as the last dark knot dissolves into light around her, with a vibrant tapestry behind her showing scenes of joy and stars. Her fingers touched the final knot, and the shadow dissolved into golden light. The room burst with color, the tapestry complete. Outside, the village heard a sound like distant thunder. But it was only the world breathing easier. Alara stepped back, and the chair faded into roots and clouds that drifted away. She held a single, glowing strand, the last thread of the old hurt, now a ribbon of peace. The story was whole. And in every home, every heart, a new tale began.